Thank you for listening to this chapter. For advance releases of upcoming chapters, you can join me on Patreon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chapters, and kindly support this channel on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below. A Lady's Tranquility. Story of Kunning Palace. Author, Shi Jing. Chapter 74. A New Trick. Although I don't know where you heard the news, I have sent people to find out clearly. There is indeed a person named Ren Weijie, and his family does have a salt field in Zilujing that has been in operation for some time. However, it basically does not produce salt now, and there are not even many long-term workers. Seeing that Shuxiang Inn was already in sight, Yo Yu explained to Yo Fan Inn, "My identity is different from yours. I don't know what kind of dirty and filthy place this Shuxiang Inn is. I will park the carriage outside and wait for you at the tea house opposite. You go into the inn and find out what's going on, and come back to me later. If others ask about your identity, you can say that you are just here to gather information, and that you have a big client behind you. Don't pretend to be a big shot in front of outsiders." She treated Yo Fang Yin completely like a maid, and she was less troublesome to use than using a maid. Since this bitch had money of unknown origin, maybe she earned it herself. Regardless of whether it was true or not, sending her there could, firstly, conceal the truth and avoid her showing up in person. Secondly, it can test the depth of this bitch to see if she had any hidden tricks. Thirdly, if something unexpected happens, it would be convenient for her to directly frame Yo Fang Yin. Using her own maids wouldn't have been as effective. Yo Yu was very satisfied with her plan. After hearing this, Yo Fan Yin remained silent and looked submissive. The carriage stopped opposite the Shuxiang Inn. Yo Fan Yin got off the shaft of the car. Yo Yu only said, "Remember not to tell anyone that you are from Qingwan Earl's mansion. Ask questions carefully, especially the situation of the salt field and the money he needs. Keep them in mind." Yo Fan Yin nodded and walked towards Shuxiang Inn. As the name suggests, Shuxiang Inn was opened by merchants from Shu. The west of the capital city had never been a place where aristocrats and nobles built their mansions. Instead, there were many taverns and brothels. Most of the people walking on the streets were from all walks of life, and there were even beggars sitting on the street begging. Fortunately, Yo Fan Yin was someone who has seen her share of big scenes. After all, the last time she was involved in the raw silk business, she went in and out of the Jiangsu and Zhejiang Guild Hall and visited dozens of chambers of commerce. Although she was a little nervous now, a small Shuxiang Inn was not enough to make her feel nervous. It was also at that moment that she clearly realized she was no longer the same as before. Standing at the door of the inn, she clenched her fingers tightly, took a deep breath, and walked in. This inn had 2 floors and occupied a large area, but the interior decoration was extremely ordinary, even looking a bit old and shabby. There were knife marks on a few tables in the lobby, and no one knew what happened there in the past. It was already past noon, and there weren't many customers. Only a few small vendors and passers-by stopped here to rest, ordering a pot of wine and a few dishes to eat in the corner. The shopkeeper also stood listlessly behind the counter. When Yo Fan Yin walked in, he took a look, yawned, and acted as if he didn't see her. Only when his eyelids drooped nearly to his cheeks did he suddenly snap awake, realizing there was a customer. He just opened his eyes and looked Yo Fan Yin up and down, feeling a little puzzled. The capital was in a state of panic these days, and it was rare to see a girl coming out alone. He smiled and asked curiously, "Miss, are you here for a meal or to stay overnight?" Yo Fan Yin glanced at the stairs nearby and said, "I'm looking for someone." The shopkeeper's smile faded and his expression became strange. He said, "No way. You're looking for someone too? Miss, don't tell me you're here to look for that guy named Ren upstairs too?" Yo Fan Yin was a little surprised. "Is Mr. Ren here?" The shopkeeper had already opened the account book. took out the abacus, and was about to receive the guests. Now he rolled his eyes and closed the account book. Without even raising his head, he pointed to the stairs on the left and said, "Turn left upstairs and go to the innermost room. Someone came to look for him half an hour ago, and he hasn't left yet." If he had known that so many people would come to look for him, he should have charged each person. If anyone came to see him, he would charge a few cents, which could be used to help pay the rent owed by this poor guy. Yofanin had no idea what Renweiji's current situation was. When she heard the shopkeeper pointing the way, she felt very grateful. She bowed to him and said, "Thank you, shopkeeper. I'll wait downstairs for a while." She didn't know if they were discussing business, and it would be bad if she disturbed others. She didn't have any money and couldn't order anything, so after saying this, she stood aside and waited. Coincidentally, after she had been standing there for a while, someone came down from upstairs. The footsteps on the old wooden stairs made a creaking sound. Yofangyin looked up and saw a young man in a long gown walking down from the upstairs. He had an ordinary face and a thin figure, but he looked relaxed. With his hands behind his back, he was playing with a fan pendant made of Hettian yellow jade between his fingers. He walked down and stopped in front of the counter. He took out a silver note from his sleeve and put it directly in front of the shopkeeper, saying, "The room fee of Mr. Ren upstairs. The extra amount will be paid later. If it takes a long time, put it in the account and go to Yohuang Pavilion in the east of the city to settle it on the 1st and 15th day of every month." The shopkeeper was shocked. Oh, so generous. He picked up the silver note and looked at it. Looking at the 7 bright words Tonghe banknote 100 tals on it, he immediately smiled. "It seems that I have to congratulate this noble man and Mr. Ren. This is a good deal." This person was none other than Lu Xian, the currently idle owner of the Yohuang Pavilion. He had seen such a mercenary face of the shopkeeper many times, so he waved his hand and said, "It's just a favor. We haven't talked about any business yet." The shopkeeper immediately said, "Understood, understood." Lu Xian cursed in his heart. "You understand nothing," sneered and turned away, feeling too lazy to pay any more attention. At this time, the shopkeeper was in a much better mood, and he said to Yofanyin, who was standing on the other side, "Miss, now that Mr. Ren's guest has left, you can go up and take a look." Only then did Yofanyin realize that the young scholar was Ren Weizi's guest. She couldn't help but take another look. Lu Xian found it a little strange to see a girl in such a place where all kinds of people gathered, but he didn't think much about it at first, and just walked over. But when he heard the shopkeeper's voice, he stopped abruptly. This girl was also here to see Ren Weizi? Lu Xian couldn't help but turn around and look back, and coincidentally his eyes met Yofangyin's. She was truly dressed in simple clothes and a plain skirt. The outfit is so plain that it looks a bit shabby. Her facial features looked good, quite delicate, but she looked a little weak and thin, which made her eyes look particularly large and bright, which was quite startling at first glance. He was stunned for a moment. The girl seemed not to have expected him to look back. She was startled and quickly withdrew her gaze like a frightened rabbit. She just bowed towards him slightly apologetically and went upstairs. Lu Xian couldn't help but frown. Could it be Ren Weizi's relatives? But he had never heard that he had any sisters, let alone a family. He felt somewhat suspicious. He turned around and walked out of the simple inn, but as soon as he raised his eyes, he saw the carriage parked across the street. When he looked at the emblem on it, his eyelids jumped suddenly, and a flash of lightning flashed through his mind. The Yo mansion has a carriage, and the master of the Yo mansion should be in the tea house opposite. The girl he met just now was thin and haggard, and although she was wearing a maid's clothes and was not even as good as a maid, her demeanor did not look like a maid. Could it be the illegitimate daughter of the Qingyuan Earl's mansion? Lu Xian turned his head again with a ghostly look on his face and took a look inside the Shuxiang Inn. Deep thought flashed in his eyes, but at the end he laughed. Interesting, really interesting. He clapped his hands lightly and made a decision in his heart. He had originally planned to go back directly to Yohuang Pavilion, but he changed his mind at that moment, got on the sedan chair waiting on the roadside, and said, "Let's go to Xi's mansion." Yao Fangying went upstairs. Turned left to the innermost room. She stopped outside the door, stretched out her hand, and knocked gently. "Excuse me, is Mr. Ren here?" Ren Weizhi was 24 years old this year. He had failed in many examinations. Before he was 20 years old, he had not even passed the preliminary examination, so he gave up scholarly pursuits and took over the family salt field after his father passed away. However, the family's salt field had been passed down for 3 generations and had been mined for hundreds of years, so it was close to exhaustion. He was also a scholarly man and not good at business. After only 2 years, the family situation was much worse than before, and even got worse. By now, all the original farmhands had left. He had been in the capital for nearly a month, and many people had heard about his invention of the Zhuotong well and came to the inn to inquire about the news. But most of these people didn't really want to lend him money or invest in him. They just wanted to take a look at the drawings in his hand. After a while, they couldn't cheat anymore, so they naturally dispersed. Fewer and fewer people came to see him in the inn. Many people even said that he was a liar, who had squandered all his ancestral fortune and was unable to run the salt field well, so he came to the capital under the banner of some invention to cheat people. To use the words of those people, "For hundreds of years, so many people have not figured out how to dig deep wells. And you, a bookworm, who has never even been to a salt field, let alone drawn brine yourself, actually claim that you have a way. You can tell that it's just big talk, but it sounds good." After seeing Lu Xian off, Ren Weizhi felt a little disheartened. Having come into contact with so many people and having been in the Imperial Examination Hall before, he could see that Lu Zhaoyin was by no means a small figure. However, the other party was not as anxious as the others. Although he also inquired about the situation of his Ziliujing salt field and Zhutong well, and was even willing to give him some silver as a temporary aid, he never mentioned the matter of investing money and only said that he would come to him again in a few days. Ren Weizhi didn't know how long he could hold on. He was wearing a dark blue brocade robe, the cuffs of which were a little wrinkled. He had a pair of beautiful phoenix eyes on his fair face and lips that were neither thin nor thick. He looked like a man who had not suffered much since childhood, and there was a certain amount of self-satisfaction between his brows. Right now, he was pacing around the room in a state of worry. When he heard the knock on the door, accompanied by the inquiring voice, he was startled at first. Then he hurried forward to answer the door and said, "Yes, I'm here." With a creaky sound, the door opened. Ren Weizhi saw the person standing outside, and it turned out to be a girl in plain clothes. He looked behind her, and indeed did not see anyone else. He could not help feeling confused. "Yes, young lady, you are looking for me?" Yao Fangying did not expect him to open the door so quickly. Her hand that was knocking on the door was still raised in the air, but she put it down awkwardly and said, "If you are Mr. Ren, then I am looking for you." Ren Weizhi did not know her, so he just asked, "Young lady, what's the matter?" Yao Fangying remembered what Xu Wenyi taught her when she was doing the raw silk business, that she should be concise and to the point, and she never kept the secret. So she said briefly, "Ziliujing, salt field, Zhuotong well, investment." Ren Weizhi opened his mouth slightly, feeling incredible. This girl did not look like she had money. But then again, the capital was full of all kinds of people. He had nothing, so it couldn't be that someone set up a beauty trap to steal the blueprints from him, right? Thinking of this, he suddenly laughed at himself, took a step back, let Yao Fangying in, and said, "So, you are here for salt business as well. Please come in. May I ask what your name is, young lady?" Although Yao Fangying had discussed business with Xu Wenyi before, Xu Wenyi was already old and had children, so she only regarded Xu Wenyi as an elder. This Ren Weizhi was around the same age as her. After entering his shabby guest room, she inevitably felt a little reserved and said only, "My last name is Yo." Renwager nodded and said, "Then I will call you Miss Yo. Please sit down." There was only a bare square table in the guest room, on which was placed a plate of cold corn pancakes, a few teacups, and a pot of tea. There were 3 chairs on the side. He invited Yo Fong in to sit opposite him, then took the teapot and poured her a cup of tea, smiling ashamedly. "When I served such coarse tea to guests a few days ago, I was a little embarrassed, but now I am at my wit's end and can't save face even if I want to. I hope Miss Yo doesn't mind it because of the situation." Yo Fong Yin was flattered, and took the teacup with both hands, but she remembered that she couldn't even drink a sip of coarse tea in the Earl's mansion. She felt a little desolate for a moment and said softly, "I don't mind." Renwager looked at her. She held the teacup and took a sip. When she lowered her eyes, she saw a plate of cold corn pancakes. She looked up at Renwager and said slowly, "Can I eat this?" Renwager was stunned. He looked at the plate of pancakes, his face almost burning, and his words became halting. This, it's for lunch. You can eat it, but it's cold." Yo Fong Yin smiled with curved lips. "It's okay." She was just a little hungry. After getting the host's consent, Yo Fong Yin put down the teacup for the time being, picked up a corn pancake from the plate, and ate it in small bites. The cold food slid into her stomach, warmed by her body's heat. She hadn't thought she felt particularly wronged, but after taking a few bites, tears began to roll down her cheeks unconsciously, and she almost choked. Ren Wisey just thought that an unusual customer had come, but he didn't expect that she would start crying before she even finished half a pancake. He was in a panic for a moment and tried to find a square handkerchief to pass it over, but he couldn't find it for a long time. He could only say dryly, "You don't cry. People would think I've done something to you." Yo Fong Yin lowered her head, staring at the bite in the corn pancake that she had bitten, but muttered something irrelevant. "Life is so difficult. What does pride even matter?" Renwager suddenly froze. Jiang Xuening waited in the carriage for a long time. Looking to the left, Yo-Yu was not coming out of the tea-house. Looking to the right, Yo Fong Yin was not coming out of the inn. She felt bored. What to do when bored? Yo-Yu was domineering in her own house and always bullied and abused Yo Fong Yin. It would be a shame for her not to go down and find trouble with Yo-Yu. Thinking of this, Jiang Xuening said decisively, "Let's get out of the car." Tanger and Leonor helped her down, and she went straight to the tea-house next door. The tea-house was in the shape of a Chinese character, Hui, with a stage at the bottom reserved for opera performances or storytelling. However, there were no opera singers or storytellers at the time, so the tea-house looked quite deserted. Yo-Yu was on the 2nd floor. Jiang Xuening went in and took a look upstairs. She just happened to see Yo-Yu's seat, so she pointed to that seat to the waiter who came to greet her and showed off her arrogance that had been suppressed for many days, and said, "I want that seat upstairs." When the waiter saw her posture and the way she was dressed, he knew that she was a wealthy person. He immediately smiled and wanted to welcome her in. Who would have thought that this charming young lady would say something shocking? The smiling face froze. His eyelids twitched as he looked upstairs. He swallowed and said, But, that position is already occupied." Jiang Xuening raised her eyelids and glanced at him sideways. "Tell her to get out." Waiter. It could be seen that this girl had a grudge against the person upstairs and was here to cause trouble. The waiter broke out in sweat on his forehead, and didn't know what to do for a moment. This tea-house was not very big. The distance from the 2nd floor to the 1st was less than 6 meters, so conversations downstairs could be heard clearly upstairs. Yo-Yu was muttering upstairs about why Yo Fong Yin hadn't come out yet, when she heard someone talking downstairs, saying something like, "Tell her to get out." You have to know that there were not many guests upstairs at the moment, and the voice sounded very familiar. She frowned and looked downstairs. This glance almost made her gnash her teeth with hatred, and she stood up from her seat suddenly. Okay, enemies often meet on a narrow road. I didn't come to embarrass you, but you, Jiang Suanin, came to embarrass me, and you dare to tell me to get out? Jiang Ning looked up, as if she just saw her at this moment, and covered her lips in surprise. I thought some clueless person had taken my favorite seat upstairs, but I didn't expect it to be second Miss Yo. Yo was furious. You! She was about to say something unpleasant, but she rolled her eyes and held back her words. She just took a step and walked down the stairs slowly and gracefully, pinching her throat, and said, Well, I originally wanted to argue with you, but when I think about how you are now like a phoenix that has lost its feathers, worse than a chicken, I can't help but feel sorry for you. Jiang Suaning had heard countless such ridicules in her previous life. It really didn't arouse her anger. She just smiled and watched Yo approach. Her expression remained unchanged, but Yo's expression changed. Seeing that this didn't work, new and old hatreds surged up in her heart, and she became more vicious. Look at you. You come from a lowly family. You are a savage who grew up on a farm, with no sense of propriety, and yet you want to climb up the ladder and become a phoenix. I didn't dare say anything in the palace, but I should advise you outside. It's bad enough for a young lady to have an affair with a man and ruin her reputation. But worse, you've even chosen someone with a short lifespan. I don't know who relied on the power of the Yongyi Marquis' mansion to bully others in the past, and now that family will be beheaded. First it was young Marquis Yanlin, and I don't know what will happen to Zhang Jia in the future. Jiang Suanin's eyes finally darkened. She slowly raised the corners of her lips and looked around the tea house. At last she muttered to herself, Strange, why doesn't this tea house even have a fish tank? Fish tank! When Yo heard these two words, the hairs on her back almost stood up immediately. She instantly remembered the scene when the mad woman with a cold and angry face pressed her head into the fish tank. A sense of crisis immediately crept over her. She saw Jiang Xuning's gaze turned back and gently fell on her, and even stretched out her hand to put it on her shoulder. She was so scared that she screamed and brushed away her hand. When Jiang Suaning was a child, she had been a notorious little tyrant who was feared by everyone in the countryside. Not to mention that after her rebirth, she had accumulated a lot of suppressed and unreleased anger, so she was not afraid of someone like Yo at all. She was considering how to make a more lasting impression on Yo. But before she could do anything, she heard Tanger behind her whisper to her, Miss Fawnin is here. Jiang Suanin's eyelids twitched, and she immediately remembered the lie she had told in front of Yo Fangyin before. She was the one who was bullied by Yo and didn't even dare to say a word. She couldn't let herself be exposed. She reacted very quickly, and before Yo could even react, she bent her legs, screamed, and fell weakly to the ground. She placed one hand gently on her chest and covered her face with the other hand, sobbing, Miss Yo, how could you do this? Yo felt that this scene was a little familiar, and the back of her head began to go numb, as if by reflex. She first glanced around and confirmed that neither the princess nor Yanlin was there, then she breathed a sigh of relief. Turning around, she saw Jiang Suaning still acting, and was so angry that she scolded her angrily. You lunatic! Who are you pretending for all day long? Did I push you? Did I push you? Even if I really pushed you, what can you do to me? Who do you think is here to see it? As soon as Yo finished speaking, she glanced away and finally saw Yo Fangyin standing outside the tea house. In her eyes, this person had always been docile and easy to bully, stared at her with red eyes, and asked word by word, Did you push the second miss? Only then did Yo remember that Jiang Suanin was Yo Fangyin's savior. But she didn't think she needed to be afraid of Yo Fangyin after all. She was just a concubine's daughter. She sneered and wanted to mock. Who would have expected that the next moment, Yo Fangyin, without saying a word, simply picked up a bench in the tea house lobby and walked towards her. Ah, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Someone help, help. Yo Fangyin had just come over from the inn opposite. When she first saw Jiang Xuenin, she was extremely surprised, but then she saw her second sister pushing the second miss down. At that moment, she felt her heart turn cold. But in an instant, the coldness turned into endless flames of rage. She didn't know if she was crazy or not, but at this moment she no longer wanted to back down, let alone retreat and compromise. She just wanted to be stronger and stronger so that she could protect the people she wanted to protect. With the bench in her hand, she could not see the other people who were in panic in the tea house. The only person in her sight was Yo Yu, and she approached her step by step. Where has Yo Yu ever seen such a reckless person? Even though she spoke harshly, she was still a young lady from a noble family. Moreover, she had never seen Yo Fan Yin look so ferocious, as if possessed by a demon. She was so scared that she stepped back repeatedly, tears coming out of her eyes. You get away from me, someone! Help me!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. But even her maids were frightened and backed away screaming. Yo-Yor fell to the ground in panic. When she looked around for help, she happened to catch a glimpse of Jiang Xuenin, who had just fallen to the ground. Where was this bitch weak and pitiful act? She looked completely lazy, and leisurely tidied up her fallen hair, and even looked at her with a sigh of pity. Then she gently waved her hand and said to her maid, "Hold her back a little. Don't let anyone get killed." Yo Yu was furious. The same trick was used on her twice, and after she fell for it once, she fell for it again the second time. Ah! That wretched, deceitful, despicable fox. Thank you for listening to this chapter. For advance releases of upcoming chapters, you can join me on Patreon. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chapters. And kindly support this channel on Ko-fi. The link is in the description below.